Sports. Invitations to join the battery boxing team had fallen flat. We had one professional, Sergeant Conroy, but he wasn't going to do any boxing. Oh, no. He was, to quote him, going to pluck another Jimmy Wilde from our ranks. He plucked Lofty Andrews, a beanpole, 6'1", with a pigeon chest. Conroy explained, "This lad is God's gift to me. He's as tall as a heavyweight, with the same reach, and he's only weighs 8 stone. Now, boxers at that weight are usually only, 5'6", don't you see? With Lofty's reach, they won't get near him." But before that, the battery were to have another champion. Southern Command Sports were coming up. One of the competitors was Gunner Alexander Nays, who had entered for the high jump. This puzzled us. He was the most unathletic person I'd ever met. Such was his confidence, he never trained. Came the day, and Bexhill's sports ground was crammed with shouting soldiers and things. The weather was perfect, sunny, warm, with a delightful, cool, salt-scented breeze from the channel. The grass was fresh-cut green. How can people have wars? Among the contestants were professional athletes from pre-service days. Some Canadian high jumpers were clearing the bar at 5'8", just as a warm-up. To date, no sound or sight of Gunner Nays. Then we saw it. Issuing from under the stands was a figure. He was wearing a red-hooped, loose football jersey, elastic-waisted blue military PT shorts that reached well below the knee, grey army socks dangling around his ankles, and white, slightly overlarge plimsolls. He ran in a series of peculiar little bounds and leaps, flicking his feet behind him, which I thought was some sort of expertise muscle-loosening exercise. He was blissfully unaware of the comparison his comic garb made with his sleek-muscled professional-clad opponents. By then he arrived at the jump-off. The warming-up had been terminated. The official had taken down the bar and temporarily rested it at 3 foot. Nays eyed it. He walked some 100 yards from the bar, then turned and started to run. It wasn't until he was halfway that we realized he intended to jump. He gathered a sort of lumbering momentum, but never got faster. Finally, reaching his goal, he launched himself into a sort of schoolboy double-your-legs-under-you-style jump and just managed to clear it. He seemed well pleased, unconscious of the puzzled look that followed his effort. Came time for the jump-off. An official signalled Nays and asked him if he was competing. Nays nodded. Nays walked back 20 yards, turned, and now saw that the officials had set the bar at 5 feet. For the first time he looked worried. He walked back a further 50 yards. He started his approach. The stadium fell quiet as the great athlete bounded across the grass. We all felt that something unusual was about to happen. On and on he came, making little clenching gestures with his hands. He reached the bar, and with a triumphant shout of "Hoi, hoi, hopla!" and an almighty effort, he hurled himself upwards. The bar broke across his forehead. Cheering broke out from the stands. Gunner Nays kept running. He left the field, he left the stadium, he left athletics. Our next hope of a champion was the as yet untested Lofty Andrews. 20 elimination bouts. Proceeds to the Army Benevolent Fund. Seats 6pence, 2 and 6, 3 shillings and 5 shillings. The notice was pinned below the ticket office window in the foyer of the Delaware Pavilion. "Hurry along. First fight starts in 5 minutes. Minutes 5, said Sergeant Balcon in his best voice. He was a strange-looking fellow, his eyes very close together, his nose and ears so large they appeared to be trying to outgrow each other. He spoke with that sound peculiar to the Cockney larynx when he tries to speak posh. To obtain this metallic sound, you press the chin down onto the throat, apply slight pressure to the Adam's apple, you press the lips, the lower one slightly protruding, tense the tongue, lay it flat in the well between the lower teeth and say, "Ew, ew." Troops were rolling in. I sat 30 rows back between Gunners Devine and White, Devine being no mean brawler himself. "Why aren't you fighting tonight, Devine?" asked Captain Martin. "They won't let you use your head, sir," said Devine, going through the motions of nutting an opponent. The hall was packed, and a great carillon of voices filled the ear. Cigarette smoke wafted upwards from 2,000 throats and hung like a pall in the still air. Old scores were being settled, with balls of paper flicked at the backs of unsuspecting NCOs' necks. Men were standing, shouting to men in other rows. Bombardier Rossi was taking bets in the tense region of 2 shillings. The last of the officers were sauntering in, flushed with hurried whiskies. They were greeted with cheers or raspberries according to their popularity rating. Now came guest of honour, Lieutenant Colonel Harding. No sooner had he sat down when came the national anthem, and very strangely. It was being played by Gunner Edgington on a piano from the stage behind a vast, heavy velvet curtain that acted as a baffle. As the first tinklings of the anthem permeated the babel, it was a rare sight to see 2,000 soldiers in various stages of patriotic uncertainty. Those nearest could hear and were at attention. Those in the middle were somewhere between sitting and hovering in the half upright, while those farthest away heard nothing and sat looking puzzled at the confusion around them. "What's going on?" "Stand up! It's the national anthem." "I can't hear it." "It's behind the curtain." "What's behind the curtain?" "The national fucking anthem, that's what." To try and weld the confused mass into one coherent whole, Colonel Harding started to sing, "Send him victorious, happy," etc., etc. He was joined by a few promotion-seeking officers. At the end, the small band of brave singers were given a tremendous ovation with shouts of encore enriched with farts. Edgington, thinking the applause was for him, appeared grinning through the curtain, a waste of time, as the house lights went off, blacking him out. The ring now stood candescent in the floods, the light bouncing off the taut white ropes. Two miserable-looking boxers sat in their corners with towels draped over their shoulders. RSM Warburton, scrubbed, gleaming and crisp SD, tight at the neck, climbed into the canvas area. His hair greased, glistening in the lights, his buttons flashing. Referring to a card, he spoke in a voice like prodding Bennett's. "Bennet, ladies and gentlemen." A voice from the dark shouted, "Go home, you Welsh bullshitter." Warburton machine-gunned the crowd with his eyes. "Gentlemen, please. The first fight on your programme is flyweight contest of three-minute rounds. At the weigh-in, Reynolds in the red corner weighed 8 stone 2 pounds. Give the poor sod some grub. Gentlemen, please." The RSM versus the rest continued until Warburton left the ring. The first 3 fights went through their thudding, sweating, grunting course. The animal in the crowd had been released and tension lessened. Now came the bout we had come to see. In the red corner, from D Battery, 56th 5-6 Heavy Regiment, Royal Artillery, Gunner Andrews. We cheered as Lofty stood. But the sight of his skinny body, with shoulder blades protruding from his back like wings, didn't look very promising. At the sight of him, Bombardier Rossi's odds changed dramatically. He refused to take bets. In the opposite corner sat a red thing called Rifleman G. Motts. He was 5'6", covered in muscles, hair, scars, and tattoos of snakes disappearing into every orifice. Under Neolithic brows, 2 evil black eyes stared out from hair which grew onto his forehead. There was no neck, the head seemingly joined to the shoulders by the lobes of his ears. At the first sight of this creature, Lofty tried to scramble out of the ring. "I'm not fighting that until I hear it talk," said Lofty. "Oh, don't let appearances fool you," smoothed Conroy. "They haven't," said Lofty. "Seconds out, first round." The two grossly ill-matched contestants approached each other. The Bexel air raid sirens went. Lofty, a nervous lad, immediately took cover, laying face downwards on the canvas. The referee was puzzled. "You all right, lad?" he said to the figure of the canvas. "Yes." "Then you'll have to stand up, or I'll start counting you out." The remark was lost in the booing and the jeering in true British sporting fashion. Lofty rose. The fight continued. Another disaster. The lights fused. More uproar and whistling. The lights went on. The referee was unconscious on the canvas. Lofty went to pick him up. Motts, seizing the opportunity, let go with a haymaker that connected with Lofty's cheek, and down he went. The bell went. Conroy dragged Lofty to his corner. RSM Warburton dragged the referee out of the ring. The lights went out again. The bell for the second round. Someone in Mott's corner stuck a match. The lights went out again. Lofty was sitting on his stool and was crying. "The rotten son hit me when I wasn't looking," he sobbed. Conroy threw in the towel, and Lofty joined Nays in retirement. It wasn't the end. Lofty waited outside, and when Motts appeared, kicked him in the cobblers, then ran. I suppose you'd call it a draw. Next, rugby. Sergeant Griffiths fished around for players, rather volunteers. In a hammerlock, I admitted I'd played standoff for my convent. Using threats, he got together a scratch team. Our opponents were the Sussex Regiment. As they took the field, an uneasy feeling went through me. Each one was 6 foot and 14 stone. It transpired that they were ex-convicts, who were given remission provided they joined the army. And now, we were going to pay for it. We won the toss, but that's all. Griffiths kicked off. It was the last legitimate move of the game. From then on it was a massacre. In the terrible scrums our hooker had his ears reduced to red flaps. In the rucks our shins were kicked black. In the loose they tackled anyone, even each other. Their hands off were like walking into steel girders. The field rang to our screams. By half-time we were 15 gibbering things running white with fear and hiding on the crossbar. "Milligan, come down at once, you cowardly bugger," said Griff. "They're not human, Sarge," whined 16-tone Tiny Vickers. "I've got a wife and kids to think of." "Right, I'll think of them while you're playing," said Griff. The second half saw the end. In a moment of insanity, one of us had got the ball and was immediately crushed to the ground under 600 weight of steaming beef. The brute I'd pounced on shot back his elbows, catching me flush under each eye. When I came to, I was laying in a shallow, muddy grave. I looked up. Play was at the far end and was coming my way. "For Christ's sake, don't get up," shouted Griffin, "or you'll put us all offside." I waited no more. I ran for my life. I hid under the stands. I never played again. Nobody should play rugby. Rugby is just for watching.